cheerleading voice? There you go. Okay. All right. Good morning to everyone. Welcome. My name is Robbie Barber. For those that don't know, I'm the Assistant Dean of Students here at Georgetown. I also direct the Diversity and Inclusion Office, and I direct the Bishop College Scholars Program. We're excited that you all are joining us today for our annual Black History Month series program, and we're definitely excited to hear our speaker on today. So before we get started, we always have to do our little housekeeping items. We ask everyone to make sure your phones are silenced um, so that there's no interruptions, especially when our speaker begins to speak. Um, for students, we will announce the Nexus code at the end. Um, the program will consist of legal welcome, the introduction, the speaker will come on. We will have time for Q&A at the end, and then we'll take a few pictures at the end, and then we'll head up to the Jones Hall Nelson Suite for our luncheon. All of you all are invited to join us for our luncheon. I just want to let y'all know we got some good food up here. It's a good lunch. It's a good lunch. And if her family's here and you all have to go back, feel free to come and get you something to go. Absolutely want you all to get your lunch before you all leave campus. Um, and then for students, if during the Q&A you're not feeling comfortable to ask that questions, we have another hour up there in the Jones Hall Nelson Suite for you all to sit with her and ask questions that you would have to ask for her, okay? But remember, 12:45, you have some of you all have classes, and that's not an excuse not to go to your 12:45 class. You need to ask a question. So ask your question while you're eating so that you all can have enough time to go to your 12:45 classes, okay? At this time, I would like to introduce our MC. I am trying to bring up our students as leaders and give them the opportunities for them to lead. And so our president of the Black Student Union, Miss Mariah Bridges, is going to come forward, and she is our MC. She will give you more information about herself, but can you all help me to welcome Mariah to the podium?
Good morning, everybody. I hope
Good
everybody's
morning.
day is off to a good start so far. My name is Mariah Bridges. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a junior here at Georgetown studying elementary education. I'm involved in cheerleading. I'm the president of BSU, as Ms. Robbie said. I am vice president of campus and community affairs of SGA. And I am also a member of Tiger Pride Entertainment, the hip hop dance and step team we have on campus. So, yes, I like to keep myself involved in a lot of stuff just because it keeps my mind active and keeps me away from a lot of the negative things that go on around campus. I'm so glad that we have this speaker here today and that me and Miss Robbie were able to collaborate. Last night we had one of our bi-weekly BSU meetings, and we also talked about the impact of Black culture, Black inventors, things that we use in our everyday lives that people overlook because they don't see it as important. But things like a dustpan, an ironing board, a toothbrush, a dryer, we need those things. And a lot of people just didn't know that it came from us. Our inheritance is important. So I'm really glad that I am able to welcome Miss Ukari Figgs. She is the group manager at Toyota Motor Manufacturing North America at the powertrain facility in Georgetown, Kentucky. This is Toyota's largest vehicle manufacturing plant in the world. In this role, she has responsibility for the production support groups that include production, engineering, quality engineering, maintenance, and projects. Ms. Figgs joined Toyota in 2003 as an engineering specialist in assembly production. In 2005, she earned the role of a lead manufacturing engineer, which oversees the introduction of Toyota's first crossover vehicle, the Toyota Venza. Does anybody drive a Toyota Venza? Oh, okay. Well, there's a lot more that she has to deal with. The Toyota Camry TRD, anybody? No? The Toyota Camry, the regular Camry. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Toyota RAV4. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The Lexus ES. Okay, see, we got a couple. These are all thanks to her in a big way. Prior to Toyota, Miss Figgs played 3 seasons in the WNBA for the Los Angeles Sparks, including during the 2001 championship year. She also played for the Portland Fire and Houston Comets before retiring from the WNBA in 2003. Ms. Figgs is a graduate of Purdue University with a degree in mechanical engineering. While at Purdue, she was starting point guard for the women's basketball team and won a national championship in 1999. She's just a winner all around. She currently resides in her hometown, Georgetown, Kentucky, with her son, Casey. Can you all please help me welcome Ms. Biggs to campus with a healthy Georgetown College welcome as she comes forward to speak with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have to see if I can steal Mariah to introduce me when I go anywhere. No, thank you all for having me today. I definitely want to thank Ms. Robbie Barber for giving me the opportunity or asking me to come and speak. And when she told me the topic, so the topic is the impact of black culture, you know, I thought about it, and I'm going to kind of go through my slideshow here, I think. When you look up black culture, this is usually what you'll see on Google. So it's a lot of public figures, entertainers, inventors, etc. And if you look the definition, so I'm not going to read both the definitions to you, but the portion of this definition of culture that I really pulled out was the customs and the achievements and the social institutions of a particular people. And so for me, I didn't want to come up here and speak to you about a bunch of pop stars and artists and people that I didn't know. But I wanted to talk to you because you're here in Georgetown, about 5 miles from the New Zion, where I grew up, which was founded in November 23rd of 1872. And it was founded by 2 former slaves. And so for me, growing up, I didn't have to look to, well, I didn't have the internet, so I'll age myself right there and say I didn't have the internet, but I didn't have to look far for heroes or people for me to look up to. It was a lot of the people who came from my own community. So I'm going to just focus today on the impact that New Zion and the culture there has had on my life. And as Mariah mentioned, I am or was able to accomplish quite a bit, both from a basketball standpoint and in engineering. But without, honestly, my community and the people there in New Zion and that forethought to start that community, I don't think I would be up here today. So just a little bit about New Zion. So again, you can see in the red, so it's about 5 miles down Lemons Mill, not far from here, but probably not very many of you have heard of it. But it was a small community, or what was called a hamlet. And so they were formed basically because the large landowners, after slavery was abolished, needed workers, right? And so it gave the slave owners gave or sold or leased land and plots to the freed slaves, and they were able to get this land in order to kind of have a vehicle for growth, basically. And so New Zion was one of 40 black hamlets that were formed in central Kentucky at the time. So you may have heard in Scott County of Boydtown or Watkinsville, in Lexington, Jimtown, Maddoxtown, Bracktown, and so those were the hamlets during that time. And so just to give you a timeline, I'm going to talk more about this timeline that I made, but basically the Emancipation Proclamation was in 1863, and New Zion was founded in 1872. So when you think about that and think about, you know, those members, those 2 gentlemen that started New Zion, it's pretty amazing to me. And to know that without, again, their forethought and what they were able to do, really helped me along my path. And so why is New Zion important? During that time, again, laws were different and things like that. And so for those little communities, they had to kind of have everything. So there was a general store, there was kind of a confectionery store of what my uncle called it, and I'll talk about him a little bit more. in a little bit. But that general store sold hardware, shoes, jeans, canned good, meats, those type of things. And the confectionery, what he called the confectionery store, was more like candies and ice cream, I think, and things like that. There was also a school there, so it was grades K through 8, and so it was a school that was formed there in the town. And each of those hamlets had that school. We have a church that's still standing there, New Zion United Methodist Church. There was also farmland, and a lot of the people there kind of had to do some of their own work, right? So they did. There was definitely some meat processing and some other businesses within that community. And so when I look at the culture of New Zion and why it's so important to me, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I get emotional, because some of these people are gone, and it really means a lot to me to be able to speak about what they did to help me along my path. So one example for New Zion's culture is just the community in general. Like I said, I think people there helped each other. They respected each other. As I mentioned, there was meat processing, but some people had cattle, some people had gardens, and so sometimes they swapped and had to do those type of things. And so one of the pictures is some of the gentlemen who were actually slaughtering a hog. And this is obviously not from 1872, but this was probably about 20 years ago there in New Zion. And I'm giving courtesy to that picture for Sarah Hoskins, who has come through New Zion and really documented not only New Zion, but some of the other hamlets. And wait a minute. There she is. I knew she was trying to get here, but I wasn't sure if she was here. So she really did an amazing job. So I gave some of the credit on some of these pictures to her because without her, I wouldn't have them. And so the other big thing is fictive kinship. And so that picture is two people that are not blood related. So fictive kinship isn't people who are related, but people you have an emotional relationship with and who support you. And that's my Uncle Bill and Aunt Charlotte, who are not related, and it really messes everybody up when I tell people aunt and uncle, and they're like, is that your dad's uncle? Who is that? So, Uncle Bill has passed, Aunt Charlotte's still here, but they are people who loved on us like, my brother and sister, like we were their own kids. They babysat, if anybody knows me, I love Coca-Cola. Uncle Bill worked at Coca-Cola, so he is the reason that I still drink Coca-Cola over the P word. I won't even say it. I can't drink it. So in any place I go, I'm like, do you have Coke products? They're like, nope. I'm like, give me water. So anyway, but they, were really special to me. And I mean, honestly, he worked at Coca-Cola, but also had a business, I guess you could call it, on the side of pumping sewage, which not a lot of people want to do, but you know what? He made an amazing career out of doing that. And then when he passed, I had so many people say, do you know anybody else? He's been doing this for me for so many years. He was one of the best. And unfortunately, this week his brother passed, who is kind of an interesting story. So his brother, we called him Uncle Bill and Aunt Charlotte. I called him his name is Samuel Lee Williams, who passed away this week. But his wife we called Aunt Net. So it was kind of weird. I still don't know how we didn't call him Uncle Sam, but maybe that's the reason we didn't want to call him Uncle Sam. I'm not sure. But anyway, they were really instrumental in my life. And, for me, when you think about people who aren't blood related but are there for every game, academic meet, college graduation, those type of things, they're always congratulating you and making sure that you know that they care, and that's always been amazing. And then the pride, I think, not everyone in New Zion had the opportunity I did to go to college. Some people weren't even able to go past that school that was there in New Zion, but everyone who had a job, they took pride in their job and did it to the best of their ability. I had a great uncle who was I guess you would call him a chef at one of the horse farms, and man, he could make some really good food, and he was proud of it, and he would let you know it. But there were people that really, really cared and took pride in everything they did, and it really goes a long way to know that that kind of pride existed, because sometimes if you just read the school books about our history here, you don't get that pride all the time out of that. So I was fortunate to be in an environment where I could see that. And then work ethic. I think work ethic was like no other. My grandfather farmed, and I'll talk about him a little bit later, but my grandmother as well did. She worked at a horse farm as well. And as soon as she would get home, she'd go out to the garden and, either pick the weeds or find something that we were going to eat for dinner. And then she was, cooking, and then she was doing something else. But that work ethic that they had, even when they had a full day's work, when they got home, there was always work to be done, and that really carried over for me. So these are just some pictures. Again, they're not, probably the picture on the left is somewhere in the 60s, I think, 50s or 60s. The picture on the right's got quite a few of the men from the church. My dad, my great-grandfather, and some of those gentlemen there. This picture is, I'm pretty sure I'm in this picture. It's either my sister, my brother, myself, and maybe one of our cousins on my grandfather's farm, which was right beside us. And then there's another picture from Sarah of my grandfather's tobacco farm, and then you can see the church kind of back there in the background. And then this is a picture of my grandmother on the left with the hat on, and my grandfather. So my grandfather, Winston Figgs, was a farmer. He actually did a lot of things, but ultimately became a farmer. And really for me, with him, he passed away in 2020 at 90 years old on his birthday. So it's like you think about how much and how hard people work, but to be able to live that long and everything that he was able to show me and show us, I think was amazing. And I had to tell him, people always ask me, like, what got you interested in engineering? And one day I really thought about it, and it was piddling around, which is my grandfather's word, piddling around in the barn trying to fix things. So when you're a farmer that doesn't have a lot of money, you fix things yourself, and I think a lot of farmers here in Scott County probably can relate to that. And so I really enjoyed trying to fix things. Sometimes now as an engineer, I think maybe he shouldn't have fixed that the way that he tried to, but it worked, or it worked long enough to get him through the day. So that's all that matters. So back to this timeline. So my dad actually helped me with some of the history, and then my great aunt and uncle, so my grandfather's brother, he's got one living brother who's 88 years old. He wasn't able to come, but I do want to mention him, and I've got a slide on him a little bit later. But in 1856, my great-great-grandmother, so it would have been my grandfather's grandmother, was born in 1856 as a slave. But if you look at the Civil War ended in 1865, New Zion was founded, and then my great-grandfather, which is a picture that's up there at the top, Luther Figgs, which was, again, my grandfather's father, was born in 1897. And my grandfather was born, so everybody from my great-grandfather, through my dad and myself, were born in New Zion. So you can see my grandfather was born in 1930, and then my dad, who's here, nice picture of your dad, was born in 1948, and then that's my sister holding me in 1977. So just to talk a little bit about my Uncle Herb, and unfortunately he wasn't able to be here, so you can see that he played football, and he's had quite a few surgeries on his knee, and his at 88, I told him I'm hoping I make it to 88 and that my knees make it with me too with basketball. But he was born and raised in New Zion. He went to that New Zion school. And then once he graduated from there or finished there, he went to Ed Davis High School that was here in Georgetown and went on to Jackson State University. So that's a HBCU that's down in Mississippi. And, you know, Uncle Herb would tell me these stories about, so I sat down with him and my Aunt Martha, who I'm going to speak about as well, his wife. And I wanted to talk to them about the history of New Zion and everything else. At the same time, I was trying to get some information because I think a lot of times people give you your flowers when you're gone, but I wanted them to know how much I appreciate everything they've done for me and my son now over the years. And so in talking to them, they have some really interesting stories. And one story in particular for my Uncle Herb, when he got on he'd never been to Mississippi, but he agreed to go play football down there. And when he got on the train to go, his mother had packed him up a bunch of food because she wasn't sure if he could eat anywhere along that path. And so for me, even though when I went to Purdue it was a long ride, I never thought about whether I could stop and eat. And that resonates with me, and it always has. Some of the stories that they've told me and really make me appreciate what I do have. And so those two years after he went to Jackson State, he went to the military for 2 years, and then he became a teacher for 30 years. And one of the things for me with my uncle that, a lot of times people talk about, veterans, and we should take care of our veterans. But when my uncle graduated from college, went to the military, served his 2 years that he had to serve, he couldn't get a job when he got back. And that, to me, hurts to know that we had people fighting for this country that couldn't get a job, even with a degree. And so I commend him for continuing. He said he went and did construction work and farm work and whatever he had to do for a few years, and then he finally did get that job. And so he became a teacher in Lexington. He retired, and it's funny, I still, sometimes when I'm in Lexington at the store and I give my credit card, the people see figs and they're like, do you remember a gym teacher from Yates? Do you remember? And I said, yes, that's my Uncle Herb. And so I tell him every time that I see one of those people because he fought to continue to have that job, and he really did make an impact on people even years later. And then so his wife, my Aunt Martha, her maiden name is Gilkey. She grew up on Muddy Ford in Boydtown, so one of the other hamlets. She went to Ed Davis, and then after that she went to Portsmouth, Ohio to nursing school. And she said she had some family that was up near the Ohio area, but she just wanted to go to nursing school. And so she went there for a couple years, I think she said 3 years, and then came back here to Georgetown and was the second black nurse that worked here at the John Graves Ward Memorial Hospital. And so she worked there for, I think, a year, and then she went on to Central Baptist and then the VA in Lexington and retired after 30 years. And, Aunt Martha grew up on a farm. So my grandfather and my great uncle, there were 8 of them. And so Aunt Martha has a pretty good sized family too, but they grew up on a farm. And when I asked her, I said, well, how was interactions? And she said, her neighbors, that they played together and did everything. They shared food, their families, but they just didn't get to go to school together. And they didn't go to church together, she said. So she said otherwise, everything in that community, everybody depended on each other, right? No matter what. And so I just have a lot of respect for these two, just for what they've taught me over the years and for what they've endured throughout their lifetime, and how they just continue to pour themselves into all of us in our family, in our church, and in our community. So I wish they were here. I'm going to hope that we can get them the live stream so that they know that And then the last person I'll talk about is my dad, Gregory Figs, and some of you know him. He's born and raised in New Zion. Went to University of Kentucky. Graduated. He was a high school teacher for over 25 years. He was a principal at Georgetown Middle, thankfully, while I was at Scott County Middle. Even though my Scott County Middle principals here. So Larkin, sorry about your luck with that. But and then Scott County High School principal again, fortunately after I graduated. But and then became the director of high schools in Fayette County. And so, you know, my dad has been instrumental. If anybody knows me, they know I'm a little bit of a daddy's girl, but been very instrumental. And when you think about what he was able to accomplish, and especially the last title there, when my uncle Herb was telling me the story, there was a superintendent, I'm not going to mention his name, at the time in Lexington that said there will never be a black teacher to teach white students in Lexington. And he told, I think, his faculty that. So the schools were integrated or were segregated at the time. And I believe he got let go after he made that statement. But to then have my dad be the director of high schools in Lexington is a pretty big achievement. And so anyway, I think, you know, again, people in New Zion did some pretty amazing things. And so I'm going to talk real quick about my career. Again, I graduated from Scott County, Purdue, went into mechanical engineering. I've worked at a place called Kaiser Talby Associates, Caterpillar, and now Toyota. I also was on the basketball staff at Purdue and University of Kentucky, and now I'm the group manager at Powertrain, where I'm the first African-American female executive at Georgetown. And so for me, when I look, well, I'll go into that here in a second, but I also won, so I played a little basketball, just a little bit, and some of you were at the game, so I appreciate the support, but one of the people who's won 3 basketball championships won at every level. And, you know, for me, when I look at the impact of New Zion on my life, I think about these things. So one, not afraid of a challenge. So I've never been afraid of any challenge because I've looked at the people at New Zion and seen what they've done and the challenges they've had, and it never really fazed me. So every one of those championships was the first championship for that team. So nobody done it. So when you all that are here in school are thinking about, oh, nobody before me's done it, so what? Be the first one to do it. Be the person to make that difference. And then work ethic. Like I said, I think, you know, people in my community work so hard and they never complain. I literally don't think I've ever seen or heard anybody complain about anything. And that, to me, goes a long way because there's a lot of times people want to, they're maybe feel entitled that, hey, I did this, I should get it. And it's like, no, you're going to have to work for it. So I think, you know, making sure you have that good work ethic. And like I mentioned before, pride. I took a lot of pride in my community. I still do, if you can't tell. But like I said, not everything I read or everything I learned about Black history always gave me that sense of pride. But from being from New Zion and knowing what I know about New Zion and other communities like New Zion, I do have pride in what we were able to accomplish and are still doing, and the people that are still there are doing. And the other one is helping other people. So I mentioned, you know, helping people within the community, but man, I used to go to nursing homes with my grandmother, and she did homemakers with, I think, everybody in Scott County, and different things like that. And so, you know, people in that community gave not only to people in the community, but people outside of the community, and that's definitely rubbed off on me. And just remembering the sacrifices of those that came before me. So for me, it's, you know, a lot of people say, man, you've done so much. You're pretty humble. And I'm like, why wouldn't I be? I didn't do all that on my own, and I know I didn't, and I got a whole lot of people in this room that helped me along that path. So for me is about the sacrifices that were made before me and how I can be a person to, help somebody else see that they can accomplish something. And then all these pictures have my son in it. So my son, Kason, is here out of school. We did get a note, so I'm not a bad parent. This is educational. But to teach my son about our history. So I want him to know, I mean, it's been a long time, that history that you saw about New Zion and our family. I want Kason to grow up knowing that he's walking on the backs of those people who went before him and who have done so much. And so we've gone to D.C. and seen, the Lincoln Memorial, the MLK statue, the other pictures in Atlanta. If you've never been to I believe it's the Civil Rights Center. I can't remember. I think it's center instead of museum, but it's a pretty amazing place. It's got a lot of Martin Luther King's handwritten notes actually in it, which is pretty neat. And then, so how can you have an impact? So one thing, I found this quote. It says, "History has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own." And that was a quote by Michelle Obama, which she knows a little something about that. But the three things that I would say is, one, educate yourself on Black history. So one thing, whether you're Black, white, whatever your ethnicity, educate yourself on Black history. Because I learn something every year about Black history that I didn't know. And even for me, it's more about learn about the Black history that is not right in front of your face, right? So we hear about Martin Luther King, we hear about Rosa Parks, but I bet most of you didn't know this story about New Zion, and it's 5 miles away. So take the time to learn about Black history and really engage in some of these stories, because I think there's some amazing stories in there. And then the other one is, don't miss your opportunity to have an impact on someone else's life. So I said, be like Bob Kaiser. So on that, when it said about my work history, I worked at a place called Kaiser Talby Associates. Bob Kaiser owned Kaiser Talby Associates. He read, I think my freshman year, the Georgetown Graphic did an article. I told him about going into engineering, etc. He stopped by our house, met with my dad, and asked him if he could pay for my books at school. Didn't know me. We didn't know who this, I know my dad's told me the story. He's like, I didn't know who this guy was, but he read the article, found our house, stopped by and asked if he could help. And then when my dad said, well, she's on a scholarship, she doesn't need any books. And he said, well, can I give her a job? And he's like, yeah, you can. So, but when you think about that, he didn't have to do that. He didn't, for one, have to even have enough courage to stop by somebody's house that he didn't know, but to offer to pay for my books. And then he really did give me a job, not only during college when I was only home for a month or 2 months, but when I finished, I went and worked. When I finished in the WNBA, I actually went and worked at his company. And so he was my mentor, became my mentor, and was for over 20 years before he passed. But all of us have an opportunity to do something for somebody else, whether they look like you or not. And I didn't know this crowd of people that I see in front of me was going to be here, but I'm gonna embarrass some people maybe, because there's some Bob Kaisers in this room, and there's a couple, some families that have treated me like a daughter. I don't look like them. If you put a picture of all of us together, you wouldn't pick me out as their daughter, but they've treated me that way. They've supported me on and off the court. They saw this in the paper and they're here. And for me, that has meant so much to me over the years to have people. They didn't care honestly, I don't think if I ever picked up a basketball, they would care. They cared about me as a person and continue to pour into my son. And so, when you have the Cutters, the Lairs, the Hoffmans, the Joneses, the Callaways in your life, it makes a difference. So if it's okay to help somebody or to be a good person to somebody that doesn't look like you, because you never know what that impact will be. So thank you all for everything you've done for me over the years and for even being here. And then again, equality for everybody. I think, yes, it's Black History Month. Yes, we need people to think about Black history and to try to, make sure that Black does matter, because as you saw, Black didn't always matter in this country. And so that is important, but it's also important as a people. We're all human beings. If we don't learn how to live together, we won't make it. I know we won't make it. You can tell by the 70-degree weather, all the people that want to say, we're fighting over whether climate change is here and we're fighting over this and that. Let's just fix it. Just fix it, and we won't have to worry about the tornadoes and the floods and those type of things. But anyway, I don't want to get necessarily on politics, but what I'm saying is we as a people have to work together. There's not one race, there's not one gender, there's not one sexual orientation, there's not one group of people that can solve it by themselves. We got to do it together, and thank you. And I think, I'll just leave with we're stronger together. We're all stronger together, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And I didn't thank some of the other members of the family and friends that are here and were able to share with this. So I think we'll open it up maybe for questions. Oh, go ahead.
Let's give her another round of applause, please.
Yep,
That
no
was
problem.
wonderful. I really appreciate you talking about your impact in the world and how everybody else has the same chance to make an impact. I hope we all do that in a positive way so that for the years to come, generations and generations and generations will just get to keep telling great stories like this. So we're now going to open the floor up. If anyone has any questions, any comments, anything they want to ask or say.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know if it's still how we can make an impact, but still being is one of our seniors, who's in education, and taking to you, Senator, with him once or
Twice a week.
week. And I get emotional.
Let me
Because
see
he
this real
is
quick.
a teacher that looks like you. And so she's not only tutoring him, but she's letting him know he can do the same thing. She understands him. And I remember when he first come down there, he wouldn't say much, but man, now when I go out there and feel it, and watching, and I said, you know what? When I got home, and I said, what it is he understands how he understands people. And that's why it's so important that we have teachers in our communities, in our schools, that is a mirror of what the student body looks like, because he's connected with her. And I remember he said, I don't know if he's gonna want to do this all the time, but he wants to
Yeah.
go and have tutoring with,
Yep.
with a hero.
Yeah, I tried, actually, we were going to do it twice a week at the beginning of the year, and I said, well, after about 3 weeks, I'm like, we can cut back to once a week. He said, no, I want to go every week. And he really is engaged. I snuck a picture on him. I wish I could have put it up here now, but of both of them. So he's teaching her, and I think, she's teaching him, and I think he's helping teach her, and she's really engaged with him. And whoever gets to hire her, if anybody here is in a hiring position, she's an amazing teacher, and definitely somebody that I'm going to write a reference for in the future. So thank you. No question. Oh, uh-oh. Oh. How many? Oh, New Zealand. Oh, yeah, I didn't. It's 23 acres, so probably not even I guess it's probably a square mile, but it's not very big. If you blink while you're on your way down Newtown Road, you probably miss it. But I mean, honestly, that 23 acres went a long way, and has helped a lot of people. And again, I mean, when I look at myself and being able to come from that small community, yes, I have an accent everywhere I've traveled, 14 countries and over almost 38 states. Yes, I have an accent. Yes, I'm from New Zealand. Yes, I grew up on a farm, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Uh-oh. Can I speak French? So my son is asking me if I can speak French because Miss Cutter was my French teacher in high school and also journalism, and has been her daughter and I are really good friends and have been great friends. And so I told him that she texted me and made sure that as soon as she saw it, I think as soon as you put the thing on there, she said she was coming, and I was trying to explain to Kason that she was coming, and he said, "Do you still speak French?" And unfortunately, no, I don't. And I've even had to tell Miss Cutter a couple of times. I've been to France twice, and I think Je suis is Ukari is probably about all I got. That's probably about all I got out of it. Or familia bouche. Is that? I think you used to tell us that. It just means. Yes. 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 I cannot. I appreciate that question. That is a very good question. I cannot sing, and they do let me in the choir, but you saw how small the church was, so it was there wasn't really an audition for the church choir, so I got in anyway. But I got the basketball ability, so my dad tells this story that he could play. I think I watched the teachers played one of the teams one time, and they were telling me my dad was playing basketball. I'm like, oh no. But he can play a little bit, but he got the musical talent. But I think when I was playing basketball, I used to go up to the Salvation Army gym and play. And my dad he's a great rebounder. And so he was rebounding for me, and I was making a lot of shots. And he said, the guy that was there with his son said, "Can you work with my son on this?" And my dad said, "It's not me." So anyway, but no, I did not get that musical talent. Yes. Uh oh. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I really appreciate you being here, Sarah. And it's amazing what she was, and still does of being here. But one time we were actually the picture that I had of my great grandmother's gravestone. We were out planting flowers, and all of a sudden my sister and my son and Sarah and her daughter pull up, and she says, hey, I don't remember how many years ago it was. It's like, hey, is anybody around? Is your dad? Where's this person, that person? But she didn't even just go and take pictures. She got engaged into the community, and people know her, people love her, and I really appreciate you allowing me to use your pictures, but also being here. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to do it and listening and being there because that makes a big difference. Anybody? Oh, go ahead. Uh-oh. Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay. No. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, that this is it. I grew up playing basketball on a dirt basketball court, shooting against a basket that was on a tree. Um, had roots everywhere, so people wonder, like, how'd you get to dribble? What kind of dribbling drills? I'm like, I was dribbling on rocks or with a tree root that would bounce. You couldn't dribble here because you knew it was going to bounce the other way, but my dad finally did, thankfully, get me a basketball goal and a little bit of pavement underneath it. But I think just that work ethic, and there wasn't a professional basketball for me to aspire to. So I actually aspired to be an engineer. I thought I wanted to be an astronaut until I took my first flight. And then I realized I wasn't going to make it out of the atmosphere, so I figured I should try something else. But I think just the work ethic, and I grew up playing with boys, so I'll tell a story. I said I'd never back down from a challenge. So I played on a t-ball team when I was 5 years old, and it was boys and girls. And so a lot of the boys were going to play basketball that fall, and so I said, "Hey, Dad, can I play basketball?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So I go walk up to the table. There's a table for basketball. There's a table for cheerleading. Sorry, Miss Robbie, you might not like this story. So when I walked up, guess which form got slid to me? The cheerleading form. I'm not a cheerleader. Nothing against cheerleaders. But I didn't want to be a cheerleader. And so I look up at my dad and I'm like, "Dad, I don't want to be a cheerleader." And he said, "Well, she's here to sign up for basketball." And she said, "Well, we don't have any girls playing in the basketball league." And he said, "You do now." And so, for me, that was a moment where, I played with boys in my neighborhood. I played with them, all the way through until sixth grade. Um, and so when I started playing with girls, it was actually a little bit easier because the boys were not really rougher because I have an older brother, and there were quite a few other brothers in my neighborhood that were pretty rough. But I played against boys, and so that was kind of how I think I got better from a basketball standpoint. And then just like I said, I put in a lot of hours. My sister's back there. She went to a lot of basketball games, sat through a lot of practices and things like that. But without the support of all, like I said, all these people I've mentioned, I wouldn't have made it professionally. And even when I found out I got drafted by LA, I was in a engineering exam, and I got out of the exam, and they said, "Hey, you got drafted." And I was like, "Where?" And they said, "LA." And I'm thinking, there's more people in my apartment building. When I moved into LA, I think there were more people in that complex than all of Georgetown. So I was very overwhelmed, but it was a great experience. So, and thank you. We'll have to get get a signed copy of that picture or something like that. That's awesome. Uh-oh. Yeah, and then so Larkin also was my best friend in high school all the way through and has continued to be, was at pretty much every game I can imagine. Even the championship, he and some friends of mine flew out to LA and they were out there during the championship. So it's like people and friends like that that, you've known since you're this big and they're still supporting and loving you. And I've got a picture. He's a fireman in Lexington. I've got a picture of him with my son in his fire stuff. So, I mean, those things make a difference. And, the pictures are great and the accolades are great, but those relationships are amazing. Oh, yeah. We were also homecoming king and queen, so we won't talk. And prom. Uh, yes, Kason. Did I play any other sports? Um, in our neighborhood, we played every sport, but I only played basketball. I attempted tennis, and I think I may have tried cross country, and then I realized I didn't like running that much, and so I stuck to being on the basketball court. But that was it, Kason. No archery for me. That's awesome. Yeah.
Anyone else has any other questions? I would like to present Miss Biggs with a gift.
Oh, shouldn't have sat down. Thank you. Oh, uh-oh. I got some swag in here. Georgetown swag. I need that. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Ooh. Uh-oh. Kason, you can't have this. All right. He's going to take it.
All right, so I will give you all a second to get your phones ready. I have the Nexus code.
Okay.
Already got it up? All right, it is 212-739.
Oh.
212-739. Last time. 212-739. Everybody got it? All right. And then before we go, I just have one last comment thing, just something to leave you all with before you walk out of this room. I just want to ask or say, what impact has Black culture made on you? Or how will you let the impact of Black culture carry you through life? So I just wanted you to answer the question. Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Good thing to think about and just keep in the back of your mind. All these people who were here before us, they were on this earth to do something, and you were put on the earth to do the same thing. So just whenever you feel kind of down, you want to give up, just think about the people who were before you, who invented this or did this or made a name for this or have this quote. Like you everybody for coming, and have a great rest of your day and go to class.